Hello everyone. I know. I have been AWOL. My health has not been the best, but I'm finally happy to be back. Yes. I have someone with me today. I'll get to it in a minute. If you're here for the first time, welcome. I am Ola, your DEI bestie, and through Inclusive, I support organizations and inclusive leaders, ensure that they get the very best out of their employees and they function at the highest levels of productivity, innovation, and inclusion, especially by fostering a strong sense of belonging in the workplace. Today, I have a DEI specialist with me, DEI specialist extraordinaire. Her name is Oluwafunmilayo Ayobami Oni, but because she's my friend, I get the privilege to call her Ayo. And she's really here to share with us a day in the life of a DEI professional in Canada. I will not talk much. I will let Ayo introduce herself. Ayo, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Ola.
Tell them.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the warm invitation. My government name is Oluwafunmilayo Ayobami Oni, but my friends still call me Ayo, and I will encourage you to do the same for me. Ayo means joy. That's so easy for everyone to know and to understand. And I am so excited to join my friend here to discuss about diversity, equity, and inclusion, particularly from my own experience as someone who works in Canada. I need to give a caveat. We are presently in Cancun, Mexico, to celebrate my birthday. So it's going to be a fun, simple chat. It's not going to be official, and we will just have fun with this. So do not take us too seriously, but also take us seriously, because we'll be sharing some important nuggets from our own work, as well as just sharing our experiences and understanding what it means to be a DEI specialist, especially with the ongoing conversation around the world about what is DEI and what is not DEI. So I'm going to pass it on back to Ola.
Oh, Shay, look at us being serious.
Yes, so
I think a good place to start is your journey into DEI. Why DEI? Why are you a DEI specialist? What does this work mean for you? Where are you coming from? And what do you bring to this work that you do?
Oh, thank you. So I'm going to be sharing a lot about my work, particularly what I do in present-day Canada. And I'm going to begin with a caveat that whatever I share today are my own experiences in my own workplace. It's my own experience. It doesn't refer to my work in my workplace. So it's just mine and mine alone. And it doesn't necessarily mean that that's it everyone experiences, or, that's exactly what, that is the street way in which we will define Canada. Everything I share is just for me and about me alone, has nothing to do with someone else or my workplace or something like that. It's just for my own personal experiences. Although people do use DEI as a very strong term today, DEI is all-encompassing, and it's from so much that I have done before. I remember that as a kid, I used to be very involved in the whole gender justice discussion. I mean, why do girls have to be the only one doing dishes? Why do they speak to women like that? Why is this girl not going to school but her brother goes to school? The experiences, the shared experience that most women have, regardless of, most women and girls, regardless of wherever you were raised, may be different, but they're shared experiences that a woman from Liberia can speak to a woman in Sweden, and they would always find a common ground that relates to their experience as girls as women. So that is how I began my journey into gender justice, using that term loosely. I would just always ask a lot of questions. Why do you have this strong idea of what women should be, and the place and the role of women and girls in a society? Why do I have to show up this way? Why do I have to dress this way? Why do I have to speak this way? Why do I have to be proper? And then I also found out that so many girls within my vicinity were not going to school, and it just wasn't exactly because of poverty. It was about so many things. Family expectation, just the understanding of their immediate family about the role of girls. So I started that advocacy with the little I could, speaking to people, joining non-profit organizations, volunteering, and with time I did establish my own non-profit organization. And so I did quite a number of amazing work that I'm proud of, being able to advocate for girls who are in, really key situations: female genital mutilation, domestic violence, women who were experiencing abuse, girls who were forced into marriages, such key issues. And I was able to support them the best that I could. Sometimes we would, work with the communities to find a communal solution to it, because these discussions are really nuanced, and there's no one way to solve these problems. And sometimes we'd escalate them to organizations in Nigeria who are able to support these women with all of the resources that they need. I also worked actively in providing education for girls and also providing financial empowerment for women. So would provide skills that are needed for them to be able to leverage and build their own financial support and all of such things, refer women to shelters, and there's just a whole lot to do. And with my growth in this work, I realized that many of these problems are intersectional. Racism intertwines with gender issues and intersects with so many other issues. And so I began to explore other inequalities that affect me, because again, we're all selfish people. It sometimes starts from us and affects so many people that look like me. I remember that with my work, I started getting opportunity to speak at conferences, to travel, and I would realize that I would meet people from other countries who were doing the same work that I do, and they have more opportunities. They are able to come to these countries without visa issues. They speak freely, and they even have more opportunities within these conferences and these fellowships because of where they are coming from, because of who they are. And regardless of how many people you have reached, how many people you have been able to empower, you just know that you do not have the same opportunity or the same access as people from the so-called developing countries. And so I began to developed countries rather. So
in a heavy coat.
So I began to explore other identities. Who am I? How does my identity relate with the work that I do? And that was a big question that I needed to answer. And in being able to answer that question, I began to explore DEI in the broader lens. Who are the globally recognized minority communities? How do I fit into this community? Also exploring and learning about other conversations that would include the queer community, that would include the broader Black community, aside from me being an African. That would also include people living with visible and invisible disabilities, and just other communities, people of color, and everyone who in one way or the other is not recognized in the global south or wherever we do find ourselves because of our sexual orientation, skin color, disability, or what have you. So that was the beginning of my journey into the broader DEI, and I somehow found myself in Canada. That's a long story. And then
for another day.
That's a very long story, but I found myself in Canada, and presently in Canada I work as a DEI specialist in healthcare. Now that's also something that is so interesting. I do something very interesting because as a Black woman, I do find that healthcare for you as a Black woman is so different. The discussion surrounding healthcare for you as a Black woman is so different from the random white person, because there are layers of systemic racism that you will face because you are Black, and then because you're a Black woman. And this is very important in my work as a Black person in the healthcare system. Presently, I work as a DEI specialist to help dismantle systemic inequities that affect minority and equity-seeking communities. So that would include the Black, Indigenous, and people of color community. That would include the queer community, and that would also include people of color as well as people living with disabilities, and all of those intersections anyways. And I have seen and learned a lot of things, how the very, very simple thing like being able to donate blood,
Yeah.
being able to access medical supplies and support as a Black person.
Yeah.
It's so different.
Very different.
It's so different. Your experience is so different. The criteria that have been set aside for you is so different from the broader criteria. And sometimes people say things like, oh, this criteria is set to protect you. And sometimes they are. But they are also very, very discriminatory because it restricts your access to be kind, and it also restricts your access to, contribute into a pool that every random person can, and also support people that look like you. Because in healthcare, there's sometimes a need for you to donate blood, kidney, and whatever, because there might be need for someone who will need a certain match.
Yeah.
So you will be the match. And so if you as a person is not able to donate all of this, that means that typically someone who looks like you, which means a Black person, is not able to, access this resource. So my daily work is to support my team to look at all of these systematic issues, systematic inequities, and look at how we are able to prefer a solution into it, looking holistically. What are these problems and what can we do in the long run to be able to find a solution to this problem as a team? How do we support the organization to become more welcoming, to becoming more equal, and to becoming more inclusive for people who work within the organization and also people who benefit from our services? So that is what I do. And apart from that, I also, from time to time, we look into commemoration of key recognition events for equity-seeking communities. So that would include things like Black History Month, Pride Month, and other key things that recognize the contributions of equity-seeking communities and help people understand these communities, the needs of these communities, and how these communities can be supported.
Yeah. Wow. There's a lot in there.
Yeah.
So I feel like as you were speaking, talking about your journey from advocacy and social justice, it just made me remember how every single person I've met within the DEI space has very, very different trajectories that led them to the work. So there are those of us that are coming and, our journeys are really similar, from civil society, Nigeria, and advocacy. There's some people who are more of like from the corporate kith and kin, people who have worked in HR, for instance, human resources, or even just core business operations, but somehow found themselves to doing the work. And it's just interesting how DEI is that field where you meet different people with different motivations, different skills, but all just coming together to ensure that equity happens, to ensure that people really belong. And another thing that really struck me in what you said was the issue about intersectionality. The fact that, rights are not pie. You can't say that you're prioritizing, say for instance, gender issues over issues that queer people face, or issues that people living with disabilities face, right? Or people who are practicing a particular religion and are in the workplace, the peculiar issues that they face. So recognizing that all of these things are linked and you don't necessarily have to pick and choose, right? And say, because I've heard people say, oh, I do believe that everybody needs to belong regardless of their race. But you see, when it comes to LGBTQ issues, no, I don't want to go there. So I wonder what your thoughts are about that. Like, in the work that you do you encounter issues where even within, we say equity-seeking communities, but we know that they're very different. And then sometimes there is sort of like a push and pull of which issue to prioritize. And then some people feeling left out, some people feeling not as included. How do you see that dynamics play out in the work that you do?
So this is a very interesting question, and it's something that I get faced with all the time, as a Black person who is from Nigeria, a very, very homophobic country. You get to tell people that, oh, I work in DEI, but you try not to mention that you also work at the center of the inclusion of queer people, because sometimes you might be embarrassed about how people might take it, like, oh, you're advancing inclusion for the gays. This is not right. Or there's also the religious factor. But the truth is that everyone is a minority
in some way, right?
In some way, and whether you like it or not, there's need for solidarity. And the place of what people should do with their sexual orientation is none of your business. It's no one's business. And we don't get to decide what two legally consenting people can do with their bodies. Okay? And regardless of however you feel about what people do or what people do not do, we cannot advance the exclusion of a certain group and think that by advancing the exclusion of this certain group, we can just look and say nothing. Because imperialism, as well as all of these exclusions, comes hand in hand, and it doesn't pick one group. Case in point, looking at what has been happening in the US for the last 2, 3, 4 weeks, I do speak with a number of people pre the inauguration who were very excited about Trump being the elected president. And I remember that most of the things they said was that, oh, I don't care about everything he's doing. As long as it does not like LGBT people, then I'm going to cast my vote for him. Yeah. I'm going to support him. And since he got there, Trump and everyone who works for him have showed that LGBTQ people are not the people they do not like. They do not like equity deserving communities. And equity deserving communities means black, means people of color, means indigenous people. It means everybody in that category. And they are going to do everything to advance a very white-centric, a wealthy-centric society, which does not benefit all of us all. And so, in order for us to advance a movement and to ensure that we have a community that benefits all of us, we have to be able to support ourselves and build an umbrella of a community that serves as an umbrella where we are able to support ourselves.
Yeah. Not like picking and choosing.
Whose
issues
and
should
also,
be at the front burner.
All of us we have very, very intersecting identities. One thing that many immigrants like me say is that we do not really know that we were black until we moved out.
Yeah.
And there's some truth to that, because while in Nigeria, I do know that if you're fair in color, if you might be able to get some gigs because maybe being a model and things like colorism, people treat you, people are nicer to you and things like that. But moving outside of Nigeria, it's not colorism, it's racism.
Yeah.
And then you are coming to the realization that not only are you a woman, you are a black woman.
Yeah.
And then you have these two intersecting identities. Depending on your health, you might also have some visible or invisible disabilities.
Yeah.
That also comes into play. So that means you need solidarity from other people living with disabilities. You also need solidarity from black people. And you also need solidarity from people who do not have that barrier that you do. Those people are called allies.
Yeah.
So you need allies. And allies is mostly found among minority groups, among equity deserving groups, not necessarily people who have it all. The best ally is someone who has an understanding of what it means to be from an equity deserving group, because they understand what it means to be excluded. They understand what advocacy means, and they understand what it means to stand their ground. A very good example, I was reading a story recently of a white couple that adopted a child. They adopted a black child, and then all of a sudden they could see how their child was treated.
Yeah.
For the longest time, they lived amongst black people. People would tell them that, oh, this is what is happening, and they would just like show some empathy. They did not really fully
understand
until they adopted a black child. So people often do not get it until they have a taste of what it means to be from an equity deserving group. I also feel like something that also comes to mind when people talk about being queer or their understanding of what it means to be queer or their understanding of what it means to support queer people comes from a very religious angle. But my question is, not everyone subscribes to your religion, whether you like it or not. We are all from different and diverse religious backgrounds.
Yeah, and some people are not even
the word is not aligned. A theocracy. Like we are not.
Some people are not aligned with any religious belief necessarily.
So whatever you pick or whatever you choose based on your religion is for you and for yourself alone. Whatever you decide, I want to be queer, I don't want to be queer, for you or whosoever you are guiding up until they are 18.
Yeah.
After that, you don't get to decide what people can be or what people cannot be. Therefore, it should not be your place to tell people who they can be. And many times, the same statement and the same mandate that is used to speak about queer people is the exact one that was used to speak about black slaves during the time of slavery.
Yeah.
So, how do we want to align this? Because many have used religious books to justify slavery, to justify hatred, and they still do till date.
Yeah.
So we do need the support from all of these groups. We need all of these equity deserving groups to come together to be in alignment. And many of us also belong to many of these equity deserving groups. You're a black woman, even if you are not queer, you may be a black woman living with a disability. And that is so many injustices together.
Or an immigrant,
exactly.
A child of immigrants.
A black immigrant woman living with a disability.
Yeah.
So there are so many intersections like this.
And that's not to say that people from the majority groups cannot be allies.
No. In fact, sometimes, I also need to say that sometimes people from the majority groups makes the best allies because they have access.
Yeah.
That many people, I use the term we here loosely as a black immigrant woman, they have access to the resources, the privileges, and the place that we do not have access to. Mm-hmm. And they are able to speak up and use their privileges to advance our own cause. And as such, they make very, very good allies.
Yeah, using their own power within their spheres of influence. That's really critical. Yeah, I agree. And, you were talking about the US and just all of that happening. We see it's all over. Like everybody knows what's been happening. We've seen large organizations who used to champion diversity, equity, and inclusion, and all of the good stuff, suddenly making a 360-degree turn and saying we're scrapping our programs. Even people have lost their jobs. DEI experts have lost their jobs, and it has left a lot of people questioning. So why do we need to keep investing in diversity, equity, and inclusion? If you were to advise companies at this time, at this critical time, where there's some kind of wave or would I even say backlash against diversity, equity, and inclusion, what would you say are the main reasons, maybe we can call it dividends, of continuing to invest in DEI at such a time in the world?
Oh yeah. So I think I will start by saying that the organizations who have recently stopped their DEI programs were never doing DEI.
And not on period. So yeah.
They were never doing DEI.
You heard it.
in the way they were never doing it. Was just performative. Celebrating Black History Month, celebrating Pride Month, celebrating Indigenous History Month, making all of these commemorations is not DEI. It's just an addendum. That is not what DEI is. DEI means understanding and doing your best to uproot systemic inequities.
Yeah.
So if you come today and say, oh, we are cancelling our DEI programs, that in itself is not DEI. Because there is a major misunderstanding that DEI means upgrading people who do not have upgrading people.
Yeah.
For example, I think to explain it better, they will say things like upgrading people who should not be there, who should not be qualified to DEI hires. No, what DEI does is to dismantle the process and make it equitable for all, so that everyone can have access to the same opportunities. So if you as someone from an equity deserving group is joining and speaking and talking about dismantling DEI, you are practically dismantling access to opportunity for yourself. Now, going back to the original discussion as to should DEI still exist?
Like, what's the dividend for investing in it?
You see, I remember that before Trump was elected, I did speak to a mentor in the DEI sector, whom I went to and I asked what her opinion was of Trump and everything he's doing, and she said, I think Trump is going to win, but when he leaves, he's going to create more problems, that there is going to be more need for DEI professionals more than ever by the time he leaves. And I really do key into that, because again, DEI is systemic. It's not Black History Month. DEI means looking at the whole every day and trying to see how you make it better.
Yeah.
An organization does not have to publicly announce that they have a DEI strategy for them to actually have a DEI strategy. DEI means, I feel like sometimes people even forget what DEI is. They just say DEI. DEI is diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah.
Diversity in hiring, inclusion in the workplace, equitable workplace practices, as well as in the whole. I can bravely state that up to this moment, I am sure that so many organizations, many organizations in the US who were not performative, still have the work ongoing.
Yeah.
And they will continue to do it. The fact that they are not celebrating Black History Month, the fact that they are not doing all of that or publicly doing all of that, does not mean that the work has stopped. In fact, I dare say that many organizations who were doing that year, particularly after the death of George Floyd, joined it because it was trendy.
Yeah.
And I am very sure
cool
it was a cool thing to do. That if the Liberal Party was still in power today, they would not have announced and say, oh, we are stopping DEI. Is there a setback to the work in the work? Yes. Mm-hmm. Are we going to have a lot of problems in the next 1 year, 2 years? Yes. But I still think that there was some good that came out with that, from that general wave and understanding. There's so many things that people talk about right now. There's this consciousness that people have, which is very heartwarming to see. Being able to work from home is a DEI initiative, whether you like or not. Being able to work remotely from your home, being able to take maternity leave, a long maternity leave, and get paid
flexible.
and get paid for it is DEI.
Yes.
Telling your workplace that, I need headphones because I have a disability. Telling them to install ramps is DEI, and all of these works are still going to go on in some way, even if we don't. Now, you find that on many teams, for example, that people are more willing to listen to you. People are more willing to hear what you have to say, even if they don't understand it. There's this consciousness that, okay, I don't understand this, but I'm willing to learn.
Yeah.
People are more inclusive in the workplace, regardless of the religion, whatever religion that you choose to believe in. Being a Christian, being a Muslim, the work is not perfect.
Yeah.
But it has grown, and it will continue to grow, regardless of what is happening. I also want to use this moment to say that while the US is a global power, it is not the only country in the world.
Yes.
And there are so many countries like Canada that has embraced inclusion and diversity and equity And even if the work is not perfect, they continue to do it. And I believe that we need to hold on to that. There's so many Nordic countries too that continue to do the work of DEI. And it's not as loud as the United States.
Or people denouncing
and backlash and things like that. The work is ongoing. In fact, at work, someone has been doing a test since all of this has been going on in the US. Every day they just wake up and go on Indeed and Glassdoor to check about DEI jobs. And every day there are lots of opening for DEI roles in Canada. And that is progress. Although Canada does share a huge border with the United States. There's so many bordering communities between Canada and the US. Although the rhetoric in the US is flowing into Canada.
Of course.
But there's still progress. And that is really important in the work that we do. Trying to hold on to what is good, what is happening, and the consciousness that people have. Even many people who do not know, who are anti-DEI, who do not know that they are benefiting from DEI, are still benefiting from it. And for me, that is progress, because you are able to point out to this person and say, oh, do you know that this is a DEI initiative that you're benefiting from? And even if it benefits someone that you don't like, you are also benefiting from it. And so one thing I have held on to is the joy of this work and the amazing things that are happening and that continues to happen. The world is not where it was in the 2000s. And while the US is busy repelling so many life-saving and important policies, progress is happening in other corners of the world. And that is important.
I think it's really critical to emphasize that even though the US is a global power, the US is not the whole world.
It's not the whole world.
And I do not think that the political realities of one country should determine the direction of the whole world. There's something inequitable about that as well. Because everybody's realities are really different. Now, I know you've been speaking quite positively, and I know you generally to be, quite a positive person. But I wonder if you're able to share, because I know there are other people who might be working in DEI as well, who might be able to relate, some of the challenges you've faced or you continue to face in the work that you do. Because I know that this work is a work of influencing, is a work of advocacy, constant advocacy, both in the boardrooms and on email trails. You are constantly advocating for resources, for people. What are those challenges that you would say you encounter? In general terms, what are those challenges that you come up against every day, and how do you react to them? Does it make you say, oh wow, I'm not sure I should continue this work? What really keeps you going, and how do you respond to them?
Thank you.
Very tough one.
That's a tough one. So for starters, while many organizations still have DEI teams, I think many people do overestimate what the DEI team can do and the capacity of the DEI team. Like, oh, we have this problem. Let us go to the DEI team and
they have all the solutions.
Unfortunately, the DEI team mostly play the role of advisor to the organization. So you can only advise the board of directors about this is what we think we should do. And I find that in most organizations, the board of advisors or whatever do have to agree. And that takes a very long bureaucratic process. So the implication of that is that you, the DEI team, is faced with the challenge of having to empathize and also let the community reaching out to you know that while we are doing the best that we can do, ultimately it is not in our position to put this in place, which can be a very, very tough conversation to have and a tough place to be.
Yes.
Because people sometimes assume that you have all of the power.
Expectations versus reality.
Exactly, and rightfully so. They're faced with this inequity.
Yeah.
They want an injustice. I mean, they want a solution to this injustice. And the organization has set up this team and say, oh, we have this DEI team that is going to be able to support us. And they come to you, and you can't just
make all the problems go away.
So that's that's really a big issue. Expectations versus reality, the very, very long bureaucratic process of putting things in place, which can be a factor of resources or a factor of leadership. Another big problem that I find is the lack of alignment among equity deserving group. It's such a worrisome situation to be in, because I find that we all know that we have strength in numbers.
Yeah.
And so it is easier for all of these communities to come together and advocate for something, stand firm and say this is what we want. But it is quite impossible for these communities to be able to achieve anything, even if they can't agree together as one that this is what we want.
Yeah.
If you can't agree, how do you get others to agree with you? How do you get others to join you in the advocacy? So it's such a big problem that sometimes I just want to wake up and, I just want to detach from this. There's not much that I can do if all of these equity deserving communities are not coming together are not coming together as one, like a broom, like my Nigerian people would say, like come together as a broom. I just need all of these communities. And personally, another issue that I do have, particularly as a Black person who identifies as a Christian, is the fact that my work with these communities is often like, in terms of my friendships and communities, when I have to tell people that, oh, I work as a DEI specialist, because many people understand DEI to be you work in the intersection of inclusion of gay people, then there's this judgment of, oh, as a Christian, you should not be doing this.
Are you even supposed to do
that? Are you a Christian? Are you this? Are you that?
Yeah.
Which is something that I honestly do try to navigate and, state my own position, what I do. It's not even like I owe anyone an explanation.
Right?
But again, you have a large community that sometimes you just want to explain yourself and let people see things from your perspective. So all of this I feel like these are my daily, everyday struggles. If I'm asked that, oh, what are your struggles as a DEI specialist, I would say the number one is the expectations that come from the community that you're supporting, and this hand in hand with the bureaucracy.
Yeah. Like the actual process of making change happen
takes such a long time. It takes such a long time that DEI personnel have very little to do with the larger process in the end, because with many organizations, what DEI team would do is to provide data, provide recommendations, make a case for this and all of that.
Yeah. At the end of the day, the final decision making
is not with the DEI team. It's with, and sometimes many DEI decisions are made from a business-centric angle.
Yeah.
So even if a DEI decision is good, if it's not profitable, it's not going elsewhere. A DEI decision may be good, but it may not be the right time for it.
Yeah.
It may not just be the right time to make that decision, which is sad. I feel like every time is the right time for a good inclusion decision.
But then we also have to take into consideration nuance and
the
realities
of
businesses and
all of that.
Yeah.
I need to state here that I really do hate capitalism and all of it that stands for. But it's so sad that you hear things like, oh, this is not a good time for this, even although it's a good thing to do, but it's not the right time for this. And how will I convey this back to this community and say, oh, this is a good thing, but this is not the right for this. Maybe come back in 3 years. It's sad. So it's just sometimes, for example, for communities, say communities living with disability, for example, it may be that they just need very simple inclusion equipment. And then I've read from many DEI specialists who will go back to their team and they will say, oh, business-wise, this is not a good investment right now. It's not even that it's not like it's expensive or anything. It's just not a good investment. And then when people want to get it by themselves, they probably cannot do that with their computers, because if you work in a large organization or a very tech-savvy organization, whatever you're connecting with that needs to be approved.
Yeah.
If it's not approved, it's not going elsewhere. So all of that really makes it really hard for you to do the work that you're doing, because you just like, but this is such a simple thing. It should not take all of this. It should not take this long. And so, like I also mentioned, DEI professionals who really do struggle with all of that, making a case for communities, especially, and yeah, I think another key issue is that when DEI professionals make a case for certain communities, many people forget that these professionals can sometimes be a member of this community.
Yeah.
And then they begin to treat you like the outsider who does not understand what is going on, which can be really
it's
triggering.
It's almost like the DI specialist or the DI professional is the enemy.
Is the enemy
in that case,
like,
because
I'm here too. I'm part of you. I feel the same way you feel. In fact, I may be more affected with this decision than you are.
Yeah.
But because of my position, I cannot come out to express how I feel.
Because what does that even do?
What does that even do?
Yeah.
And also because I know the process. So I just continue to do that. It doesn't make me the enemy, but I'm just perceived to be enemy by others. So sometimes people forget to acknowledge my own, they forget to acknowledge my own identity as a member of that community, because I am a DEI professional, you know, as a woman, for example, who does a lot of feminist advocacy for many communities, and then even in the workplace. And sometimes people would get, you know, certain feedback and say, oh, maybe they want, I've heard like from others who say things like, oh, they worked in a place where they were advocating, they found out that women were not earning a lot, and then they started advocating for women to be able to earn more, and then they got feedback that they were not doing enough, right? Meanwhile, they were not also earning enough as a woman.
Yeah.
But people forget this. So it's just really,
Yeah.
it can be really painful when this community forgets that you are also a member of that community.
Yeah, and some, they don't even see a lot of the unseen work.
Yes.
And advocacy that is going behind the scenes. That you're.
And DEI work takes so long and so easy to dismantle.
Yeah.
Case in point, Trump executive orders. Yeah.
Oh, we will not leave these executive orders alone.
No, they are not going anywhere. So that in 2060, when our children come, they will have evidence and documents
that we spoke out.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ayo. It's just been really good listening to you, and I know that there are people also watching who might be in that same position, the position you've sort of described, the dilemma of the DEI specialist and the dynamics.
Yeah.
So what are your like parting words or last words for fellow DEI professionals? And it doesn't have to be all sweet, right? It can also be from the lens of a critic. What are your final parting words, whether encouragement, whether criticism, or both, or advice for other DEI experts?
Okay, I think the first thing I need to say right now is that I know that many DEI experts, specialists, professionals, however you choose to define yourself, are very worried about, oh, if my role is taken away, what else can I do? Will I get a job? And I would like to tell everybody right now that while your job as a DEI professional may not exist in that context, you're skilled. You can do so many things. You can be a stakeholder manager, you can be a project manager, you can work in HR.
Like the fact that you're
not in a box. Like you have a lot of DEI professional specialists champion so many things and do so many things.
And have many transferable skills.
So many transferable skills. So why you should worry about your job because you are human. You should not worry about the title. And I may also say this from a very privileged position. I like to acknowledge that But again, I have loads of DEI professionals, feminist advocates, and people like this in my community, and they are the most resourceful and versatile people that I know because of all the work that we've done.
Yeah.
So please, worry about your job because you are human, but do not worry about what you will do next, because you have so much transferable skill that finding a job, finding what to do. Why finding a job again may be hard, because my God, there's no job in this world. God will help. Being able to define what you are going to do next is not going to be a problem, because we are all so skilled. We can do whatever we want to do anywhere we choose to work. That's one. Generally, in terms of what is happening right now in relation to the DEI movement, it's a luta continua. This is not the first time. This is not the first time, and this is not going to be the last time.
We've always been fighting.
We've
right?
always been fighting. It's always been one way or the other. If they silence us, we will use art. We will use music. We will write. It has happened before so many times, and it will continue to happen. So the fact that this is happening right now is sad. It is not the end.
Yeah, we shouldn't adopt like a defeatist.
We should not adopt a
posture and be like, it's all over. I've heard of some people trying to pivot, actually, like, even though they know that DI is their life's work, they feel like because it's not the cool thing anymore, they need to start looking for something else to do.
Well, this is the thing. People have responsibilities.
Yeah.
When they think about paying their mortgage, and you don't want to work a job that you know that tomorrow your role may no longer exist. And I think that's okay too, because we worry so much as humans, and we have so much responsibility that it's so hard to stay in a role that you are unsure of what is going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah, of course.
But even if we don't work in that core key DEI role, from what I know, many people who work in DEI is because of our lived experiences. And so even if we choose to detach from the key professional DEI role, the way we speak, the communities that we engage with, it will always come out. Once you speak like this,
you take it with you.
Take it with you, and that is okay too. That is okay too. Even if you are not doing it in a role that you are making money from and you are not paid, even if it's no longer your 9 to 5, it is very important for us, for our kids, and for the people coming tomorrow, for us to continue the work that we do. And rest is also very important. In fact, rest is a form of advocacy. And when we come back, we will continue that work. We will continue speaking, we will continue writing, we will continue singing, and we will continue doing everything that we can to advance this work.
Well said. Very well said.
Ben.
No retreat, no surrender.
No retreat, aluta continua.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ayo. Thank you for sharing all your nuggets and being so unapologetic. I mean, I didn't expect any less. Like, it's who you are. You've always been boldly unapologetic about your beliefs, and thank you for sharing some of that with us today. I hope you all enjoyed today's video. See you.
I enjoy it because we were supposed to be on the beach, and now we came to
huge sacrifice.
Huge sacrifice.
See you on the next one. Bye.